Yes, it's a very good rookie draft class, but are the odds on our side? What is the hit rates here? Today, we're going to look back to the past, look at some old rookie drafts, see what happened there, and see how things can correlate to this year. We're going to look at the 101, 102, 103, and 104, and then we'll continue on with a video series to cover as far of the draft or how much of the draft that needs to be done for you guys. So you guys just let me know in the comments if you want me to keep doing this. But I figured we'd do this exercise to spicing things up. Let's go ahead and take a look. And yes, we're going to the old PowerPoint here. 101, obviously Bijan Robinson for 2023. But looking back to 2022, the 101, per Dynasty League Football ADP back then, Breece Hall. So as of right now, jury's still out, but we have good feelings of Breece Hall. It looked good, had the injury, very explosive, high-end prospect, holds a lot of value. Can't really say many negative things. Only thing is the injury, but the thing is that he'll eventually come back from that. Looked very good to the point where I'm not really worried about it. And he is a damn good prospect, and I feel like the 101's pretty good in the 2022 class. Najee Harris in 2021. Very debatable there for some people, but going back, looking at the history there, he was the 101, had the most 101 spots out of those 10 drafts for ADP. Probably over time, it probably would have changed. There's also right after the NFL draft during this time 4 of these ADPs. But Najee Harris had a good rookie season, caught a lot of balls out of the backfield. Last year was very so-so, playing through injuries last year as well. Still holds some value. 101 upside wasn't really there. Things are hovering right now, but we got to see. Jury's still out on him as well. Let me know what you think about Najee Harris going forward, though. Do you think he's going to spike back up, or do you think this is where we're at? Because this offense is also very trepidatious. Going here to 2020, this is the comical year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. This time, back in 2020 in February, he was probably an ADP, if I remember right, going at like the 110 to 112 range. He was not really a top tier running back. He was like RB 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. And he was not in the conversation for the 101. And then he gets drafted by the Chiefs in the first round. And that happened real quick. Jonathan Taylor was close. Clyde Edwards-Helaire won it. And there was huge debates. Huge debates. I wasn't on the Clyde Edwards-Helaire side. I like to go talent over situation. And this is the time where talent beat out situation from an ADP perspective. Looking at him now, there's a chance he's not going to be on Chiefs any longer. There's a chance that his job is done. We saw Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon ball out this year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, we're going to have to see if he can turn things back up, but the odds are stacking against him, and he's only been in the league for a few years. 2019, this one's really sad. N'Keal Harry. He was an analytics darling, breakout age, decent metrics. Film, though, said different on his film from Arizona State. When it came to separation, when it came to nuance, it really wasn't there. The highlights were there, though. The yards after the catch, him winning with physicality. When he got to the Patriots, it just didn't turn on for him. It just didn't. 101 consensus. A lot of people locked in. I was high on him. I'll admit to that. But there are so many people in that camp. That was probably the biggest bust in the last 5, 6, 7 years at the 101 spot. The Clyde Edwards-Helaire bust here. He gave you some value, gave you some speculation. He was jumped up there in ADP, so you had something to play with. N'Keal Harry, pitfall drop. Saquon Barkley in 2018, felt like he held his own. Injuries were huge. Came out strong his rookie season. Came out strong last season. Looks like he's going to be holding it down for a few more years, maybe longer. Very good prospect. Closest prospect here to Bijan Robinson. Those guys compared all the time. The big difference here is dynasty value. Saquon Barkley at this time, and even after he got drafted and was the 101, it took it some time to really shoot up in ADP. Bijan Robinson's already there, and ADP is the RB1 and 5th player off the board. That's where he's at. Saquon Barkley never got that. Saquon Barkley had to get up there. In that part, it took some time. It took him to produce some as a rookie for him to shoot up there. Bijan were going there off the rip. Part of that's due to the reset. Part of that's the market. Part of that is just how things are changing in the landscape and how we view things for Dynasty Fantasy Football as a whole, as a market. Last guy here, doesn't go past 2017, really for reliable ADP, is Corey Davis. The 101 here is a stacked running back class. Remembering right, the stats there, his market share, his breakout age, his production profile, and now he's got a first-round grade coming out of that with the draft capital, really made him look good as a prospect. One thing, he had some injuries at Tennessee, and another thing, too, is a G5 prospect. G5 prospects that have those good metrics, you still got to take those with a grain of salt. That's one thing we learned from him and some other players like that over the years. That doesn't mean they can't hit, because we've had them hit. We've had them hit big before. It's just you have to be very, very observant with them. Corey Davis has had some splashes, but has never lived up to that 101, and it was tight in that year for the 101, but he did have 6 out of the 10 draft slots with the 101 pick in that year. That being said, when we look at these prospects here, Bijan Robinson definitely trumps Najee Harris by a landslide. Kills Clyde Edwards-Helaire. N'Keal Harry, even though he had that good metric profile, can't touch him. Saquon Barkley and Bijan's the close 1-for-1. You can really make a little case for Breece Hall because he was productive, had that good athletic profile, but the hype was never there. The hype wasn't there from when he was a freshman, from when he was coming out of high school. So that kind of makes things a little different because the hype piece, it includes into the value. It bakes right in there. So sure, Breece Hall, after everything cleared out, damn good prospect. This is different with the Bijan Robinson case. We had that with Saquon Barkley coming out of high school, showing up at Penn State. It was off the rip as a freshman. That is something you want to see. I like Breece Hall coming out of high school. I sure did. I thought he was an instant change over David Montgomery. But as a whole, as a market, people kind of slept on him early during those first couple years of his collegiate career. Once he started to turn out some production, people started to look at him. But really, off the rip, people was not into him like they were in Saquon or Bijan. That's the big difference. But if I had to mark him, closer to Breece Hall, closer to Saquon, possibly more, should be more with how he's being valued. But honestly, he's a damn good prospect. You don't get this too often. To the 102, Jackson Smith-Njigba's got the 102 in ADP right now in February. And in 2022, it was Drake London. There's other players that probably jockeyed up and down throughout the summer there. But Drake London, right after the draft, was the 102. Decent production profile, had a decent season last year. Jury's still out. The Atlanta Falcons is pretty fluky right now when it comes to the offense at the quarterback position. Good target share numbers, good air yards numbers. Might be able to put together later on, maybe next year, year after, if we can get some good volume, some good accurate targets going his way. Next is Jamar Chase at the 102. For me, he was my 101 that year, and there was nothing else to go by. I was locked in there, and a lot of you guys, he was the 101 too. It was hotly debated, if you remember, and you catch that some years. The 101 is a very debatable spot in rookie drafts, and it should be some years. Jamar Chase, though, locked in, thought he was a generational talent at his spot, proved to be so. And he's the 102 in startup ADP right now. 2020, Jonathan Taylor. Same thing. Adam locked in as the 101. Adam locked in as the RB1. And the production profile was there. A lot of people argued whether he can catch passes or not. A lot of people were debating him. A lot of people were against him. A lot of people were not into the athletic profile. They ignored it. They weren't into the production profile. They said he had too many carries. He kind of fell a little bit, 102, 103-ish, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they wanted him more due to the situation. People were scared of Nyheim Hines. They were scared of Nyheim Hines over Jonathan Taylor. We now know that's foolish. I won on that one. Josh Jacobs, 102 here. This was a tight running back class with some running backs in it that kind of went up and down. Josh Jacobs had his up year last year, had some down moments as well, but it's been steady. I'll give him that. Personally, for me in that season, it was A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. I was high on them. Those were the prospects that I was targeting hard. That was a year where I skipped out on the running back class, and I targeted those two wide receivers hard because you can catch them later. You can catch them mid-round of the first round. You can catch them later in the first round. And I loved the value. And if I was up early, I traded back, collected capital, got me a little A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was the wide receiver 1 in Devy for a long time. Then got drafted in, I think, second round. No one liked his landing spot. Fell a little bit. I thought that was a tremendous value. DK Metcalf, athletic profile. Same thing, good value. Darius Geis in 2018. This running back class was solid in 2018. Nick Chubb was coming off the ACL. People doubted him. Foreman, people loved his combine metrics. We also had some other running backs there. Darius Geis, 225-pound running back, very explosive hammer, and had an unfortunate situation that really impacted his career and could not come out. He did some dumb shit. Now he looks like one of the biggest busts on the screen here. When it comes to the 102, it was highly debated during that time. Going to Leonard Fournette at 2017. Good running back class here. And probably was underrated going into the rookie drafts that year. Leonard Fournette was highly debated with Ezekiel Elliott from prior. And good running back coming out for the draft. People were really high on him coming from LSU. Especially like a year before the draft. People sharing highlights. People showing what he can do. He was running over dudes. He looked like he was going to end up being a generational talent type of player. Kind of faded from the limelight from that, but still was regarded pretty high coming out of college. Where I see Jackson Smith-Njigba fitting into this mix, there's a lot of debates between him and Drake London right now, whether who's the better prospect. I'm catching that on podcasts and stuff when I'm scrolling my Twitter and my other social medias, and I feel like there's a little disconnect on Jackson Smith-Njigba because he missed out last year. He's highly productive, 5-star recruit. He played a lot of snaps in the slot, but I feel like he can play on the outside because he's very nuanced, sticky hands. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson said he was the best one of the bunch. He was a playmaker. I do not have him on the Jamar Chase level. I don't think he can touch that. I don't think he can get close to that. I think Jonathan Taylor's a little bit too high to touch. Leonard Fournette at that time, I think, if I remember right, it'd be very hard to touch, but he's kind of getting closer to that. I would have took him over Josh Jacobs, would have took him over Darius Geis. And honestly, I like his profile a little bit better than Drake London. I like how he separates more. I think he's got just as much upside. I think Drake London getting that high target share, Monday morning quarterback style, you kind of want that. But I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a player that once we get in the league, once we really start looking at him, you're going to wonder, man, we should have valued him a little higher. To the 103, Jahmyr Gibbs. And he's sometimes the 102, 103, depending on what draft you're in. Also, landing spot's definitely going to matter, but here we're just doing our base case. What's the 103 really going to look like with player versus picks going over history? So 2022, Treylon Burks. This one's a hot player. Some people love him. Some people hate him. I think the jury's still out. He was injured last year. The Titans offense. A lot of stuff. I think he was getting a good amount of targets for a good sample last year. I think he was getting decent air yards. I think there's some room for growth. And I think it's not a wasted pick at the 103 if some of you are feeling FOMO or the opposite of that. Kyle Pitts at 103 in 2021. I just don't, in my line of thinking, when a player holds this high of value for so long and you take him at a rookie draft slot, that no matter what, that player can't bust on you. You bust on the player. And the reason behind that is he's held that value for quite some time where you've had all these opportunities to make the move on. I feel like Kyle Pitts has been worth the 103 easily. He's been the 102. Some people 101, 104, 105. He went all over that range in time because he's a tight end and people were skeptical. But right now, you can't say that he hasn't held value. And he's held value and he gave many Dynasty gamers a chance to get out. Next is DeAndre Swift in 2020. High-end running back prospect, catches the ball in the backfield. Injuries have been huge. Huge. Has never been a full-time back, even at Georgia. And he'll probably never be one. So we're going to have to live with that. Catches the ball in the backfield. Maybe we'll get one season of full-time play. Maybe one or two. It might turn on its head later. We don't know. But as of right now, he's got a lot of upside. When he's on the field, he can give you fantasy points. And he's been holding his value so far since 2020. Very good speculative running back here. He might be on the down a little bit considering we're infusing more running backs here and considering last season he was banged up a bit, but still steady. You can't really say he was a bust for the 103. You just kind of had more expectations. And also in a lot of drafts, you were catching him later in the 103 too, back during that timeline as well. So he was going cheaper than this depending on your league. Going to the 103, 2019, Miles Sanders. Running backs was hot in this draft. People were going after the running backs. I pivoted to the wide receivers because I just saw the market being safer that way. I felt like that all these running backs had their holes, whether it was injuries, limited play, sketchy on tape here and there. I felt like there were some holes there. So, like I said, I was leaning more towards A.J. Brown. That was my unicorn, and then it was DK Metcalf. I wasn't posting videos here. I'd show them to you. But here, Miles Sanders wasn't a bad get considering what he could do in the passing game. He was explosive. Had some time behind Saquon Barkley, so you kind of understand the volume of the production. Nick Chubb at the 103. Some people faded him farther than this. Some people did. Some people knocked him down the ranks due to the ACL. I remember it. I had him at 102. I was very, 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 very high on him. It was him and Todd Gurley. It was that level for me. And it was due to the athleticism, what we saw at Georgia. And I was not scared of the ACL. I think at 103, this was a marvelous pick. This was marvelous. And then Christian McCaffrey. As we all know, should have been the 101. Some people dropped him in ranks due to his size. Some people dropped him in ranks because they thought he couldn't be a workhorse. And he ended up flatlining at the 103 because some people went with him at the 102, 101. That was a year, if I remember right, that was long ago, I was leaning on the running backs because this was the time where it was shifting towards running backs. The flow of running backs, the inventory of running backs was starting to go younger. So you could just tell the market, as we're experiencing now, that you needed to get into the running back position before it started to get kind of crazy. Christian McCaffrey, obviously good at the 103. When I look at Jahmyr Gibbs, when I look at that, I think due to his draft capital, you're going to have him ahead of Treylon Burks. Him and Pitts, maybe a push, but Pitts holding that value, it's hard to beat. I like DeAndre Swift better as a prospect. I think him and Gibbs are closer to a push than what I want to say. Nick Chubb crushes him. Miles Sanders, I have Gibbs over. Christian McCaffrey crushes them when you look at productivity and everything else from college, Stanford, and all of it. Draft capital. We ain't going to get that draft capital. Christian McCaffrey trumps everybody, obviously. Pitts, that value spike. Oh my God. That value alone. Nick Chubb should have been rated higher. Market slept on him. 104, Jordan Addison. This is our last one we're going to go over today. Let me know if you want me to go over more in the comments. So, Kenneth Walker 2022. So, I love Kenneth Walker. I have family members of his that watch this channel due to me doing so many videos on him, going over his tape in season. And I was not down or up on him. That was probably where I missed. I should have been more loud. But my overall strategy with him was if you wanted him at 102, maybe trade back a pick or so, gain some capital, and he's still going to be there. Also, in a lot of drafts, he was going past the 104. Because there was this big thing on whether he can catch passes or not. Big thing whether he'd be valuable still. Well, he's valuable. He's showing you valuable now. There's been times he's been the 102 in ADP. He has been up there. He has been valuable. He's really exceeded the 104, 103, 102. Next is Travis Etienne. We've had that injury. He's really coming into his own last year. Jury's still out, but I feel like he's holding his value considering the hit rates at the 104 starts to depreciate a little bit in a lot of drafts. J.K. Dobbins, injuries. And it's starting to mount up. We got some time on us. Looked good at the end of last year. Hopefully we can continue. Good prospect. Had some production catching the ball in the backfield. Good athleticism as well. Then we got David Montgomery. Had a good production profile. Caught the ball in the backfield. The athletic profile was very skeptic. And him going to the Bears. Now things are not sure. So it looks like we got the rookie contract and maybe a little extra to see. At the 104 spot, you got some production out of him. You got something out of him. So you can't say he's a bust, but you can't say he's a top-tier prospect either. Rashad Penny, injuries killed it. Injuries killed it. He showed some signs of life in 2021. Like, hey, I can still do this. And maybe he'll show a few more signs of life later. But living up to this status, it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And then going over to 2017, Joe Mixon. 2017, when we were in it, we did not value that running back class the way it was. Joe Mixon came out hitting that girl and had that tape come out, really put a dagger into some of his value, and then fell a little bit in the draft, but the Bengals still took him. Very good athletic profile, good tape from Oklahoma, and looked really good. I feel like if that tape didn't come out, he probably would have had a lot more value. The 104, though, is still pretty high. I think he went a little lower in some drafts. Definitely, I did not remember anyone talking about him as the 101. When I think about this pick range and Jordan Addison, other wide receivers and stuff, I think Kenneth Walker and some of these backs, Jahmyr Gibbs and maybe someone else, there might be a push there. But considering what we know with Kenneth Walker, it's going to be hard to beat, but it could be. Jordan Addison with him, I think I'd want to lean on the running back. Travis Etienne, he's going to push with a lot of our top running backs. J.K. Dobbins' profile, it pushes, but unfortunately those injuries, where he went and all that stuff and all that's happened, I think the running backs on the top end blows past David Montgomery. Rashad Penny's a G5 prospect with heavy athleticism, very athletic. I would rather have some of the prospects, some of those top running backs, some of these top receivers over him for sure coming out. Joe Mixon, man, he'd be huge in this year's draft. He'd be huge. He'd be pushing. He would not be close to Bijan. None of these guys would be close to Bijan, but he would be holding some value. So the 104, I feel like holds up. I feel like you're going to catch some safe value here, but I feel like the upside isn't probably going to be as high as Mixon or maybe Kenneth Walker, but you might catch that as well. But it's very safe. It's very safe. And we're still in the early parts of Kenneth Walker. It could be later down the road and things might change. Same thing with Travis Etienne. We went through one injury, but I really love the situation. I love what we saw last year. So nothing against him. I think he's a damn good spot. But that's it for the 101 through the 104. I'll follow up for the 105, 106, 107, 108 with another video. Let me know in the comments below how you're feeling about this draft class versus other draft class. Who are some of your misses? Who are some of your hits? I went through some of my history with some of these picks and what I remember what the market was doing. The market matters because it configures ADP and allows you to manipulate your rookie draft or drafts. But make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. It's only going to help you going forward for your Dynasty Leagues and your rookie drafts. I want to thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.